My company fired me after 11 years and my boss said, "Don't worry, we'll find someone better by Monday." So I took my client list, my vendor contacts, and my entire sales pipeline and started a competing business across the street, and by month 3 his top 5 accounts were mine. Subreddit. So I, 38 male, just watched a 28-year-old with an MBA and his daddy's last name destroy a company that took 30 years to build because he thought firing me would make him look like a leader. Spoiler. It made him look like a kid playing CEO with real money. Let me back up. I worked at Grayson Industrial Supply for 11 years. Mid-sized B2B operation based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. We sold industrial equipment, safety supplies, and commercial maintenance products to manufacturing plants, construction firms, hospitals, and government facilities across the Southeast. Not glamorous. Nobody's making TikToks about industrial supply chains. But the margins were solid, the business was stable, and the company employed about 240 people across 3 offices. Annual revenue when I started was around $34 million. When I left, it was $89 million. That gap is not a coincidence. That gap has a name, and the name is mine. I started at Grayson as a junior sales rep at 27, fresh out of a regional logistics company where I'd spent 4 years learning how to sell things that nobody wants to think about until they desperately need them. Safety goggles, industrial solvents, forklift parts, hydraulic hoses, the kind of stuff that keeps factories running and hospitals functioning and construction sites not killing people. Boring to talk about at parties. Essential to the economy. I took the Grayson job because the founder, a man named Earl Grayson, 67 at the time, looked me in the eye during the interview and said something I've never forgotten. I don't hire salespeople. I hire relationship builders. Anybody can read a product catalog. I need someone who can make a plant manager in Chattanooga pick up the phone at 6 a.m. because he trusts the voice on the other end. I told him I could be that voice. He said, "Prove it." I spent 11 years proving it. Year one I was terrible. Let me be honest about that. I lost 2 accounts in my first quarter because I overpromised on delivery timelines. Got chewed out by Earl personally. He didn't yell. Worse, he got quiet, sat me down in his office with the door closed, and said, "You cost us $180,000 in annual business because you told a client what he wanted to hear instead of what was true. In this industry, your word is your inventory. If your word is unreliable, you're worthless." I never overpromised again. By year 2, I was hitting quota. By year 3, I was exceeding it. By year 4, I was the top sales rep in the company. Not because I was the slickest talker or the hardest closer. Because I did what Earl taught me. I built relationships. Real ones. The kind where a client calls you before they call their own purchasing department because they trust your judgment more than their internal process. I knew my clients. Not just their order volumes and payment terms. I knew their businesses. Knew their challenges. Knew which plant managers were under pressure from corporate to cut costs. Knew which safety directors were dealing with OSHA audits. Knew which procurement officers were about to retire and who was replacing them. I sent birthday cards. Remembered kids' names. Showed up to client facilities not just when I was selling something, but when they were having problems, because that's when relationships get built. Not during the easy times. During the hard ones. By year 6, Earl promoted me to VP of Sales. Just me and a team of 8 reps covering the entire Southeast region. I built the playbook. Trained every rep personally. Developed the territory maps. Created the pricing strategies. Negotiated the major accounts myself because when you're dealing with a $4 million hospital supply contract, the VP shows up. Not a junior rep with a PowerPoint. I personally managed the top 18 accounts that generated roughly 65% of total revenue. $58 million flowing through relationships I'd built handshake by handshake over a decade. Every one of those clients had my cell number. Everyone had called it at least once at an hour no reasonable person calls. And every one of them stayed because of me. Not because of Grayson's product catalog. You can get industrial supplies from 50 different companies. You stay with one because the person managing your account makes your life easier and your operations smoother. I was that person for 18 companies. That was about to matter a lot. Earl started talking about retirement around year 9. He'd built Grayson from a one-room operation in 1994 to an $89 million company with 240 employees. He was tired. His wife had health issues. He wanted to travel before they couldn't. I understood. I also understood what it meant for the company because Earl didn't have a succession plan. He had a nephew, Kyle Grayson, 28, MBA from Wake Forest, which is a fine school, but an MBA doesn't teach you how to read a room full of plant managers who've been buying industrial solvents for 30 years and can smell inexperience from across a conference table. Kyle had worked at a consulting firm for 3 years after graduation. Never sold anything. Never managed a client relationship. Never sat across from a procurement director who was threatening to pull a $2 million account because a shipment arrived 6 hours late and his assembly line was down. Kyle had made PowerPoints about those situations. He'd never been in one. Earl brought Kyle in as COO about 18 months before he retired. Transition period. Let him learn the business. I was optimistic at first. Thought maybe the kid would be humble. Would listen. Would recognize that the people who'd been running the place for a decade might know a few things his MBA didn't cover. Wrong. Kyle came in hot. Day one, he sent a company-wide email about modernizing our approach and bringing fresh strategic vision to legacy operations. Legacy operations. That's what he called the business his uncle spent 30 years building. Legacy. Like it was an old computer that needed replacing. He started with the easy stuff. New CRM system nobody asked for. Rebranded the company website with a design that looked like a tech startup instead of an industrial supplier. Changed the email signatures. Mandatory all-hands meetings every Monday morning where he'd stand at the front and talk about synergy and disruption and customer lifecycle optimization, while my sales team sat there trying not to check their phones. Then he moved to the harder stuff. Started questioning pricing decisions I'd made. Why are we giving Memorial Healthcare a volume discount? That's leaving money on the table. Because Memorial has been a $3.2 million annual account for 7 years, and the volume discount keeps them from shopping competitors. That's not leaving money on the table. That's keeping the table from collapsing. He wanted to restructure territories. Wanted to reassign accounts based on data-driven optimization instead of the relationship maps I'd built over a decade. Wanted to take my top account, a $4.8 million manufacturing client called Southeastern Fabricators, away from me and give it to a junior rep because we need to develop our bench. Develop our bench. With a client that took me 6 years to land and 5 more to grow into our biggest account. I pushed back. Hard. Told him Southeastern Fabricators stays with me or they walk. Their CEO, a man named David Chun, told me personally over dinner that if I ever left Grayson, he was coming with me. I don't buy from companies, David said. I buy from people. And you're the only person in this industry I trust with my supply chain. Kyle didn't like being told no. Filed it away. Earl officially retired 6 months later. Handed Kyle the keys at a company-wide event. Gave a speech about legacy and the future and trusting the next generation. I stood in the back of that room watching the man who built everything I'd helped grow hand it to someone who thought synergy was a strategy, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The kind of cold that comes when you can see the future clearly and nobody else wants to look at it. Kyle became CEO on a Tuesday. By Friday, he'd reorganized the entire leadership structure. My role went from VP of Sales reporting directly to the CEO to VP of Sales reporting to a new Chief Revenue Officer position that Kyle created and filled with his college roommate. Marcus Webb, 29, background in digital marketing. Never sold a physical product in his life. Knew nothing about industrial supply chains. But he'd been Kyle's roommate at Wake Forest and they'd stayed close, and Kyle needed someone in a position of authority who would never question him. Marcus was that person. My 11 years of experience and $58 million in client revenue now reported to a 29-year-old whose previous job title was Senior Content Strategist at a boutique marketing agency. I requested a meeting with Kyle. Sat in the same office Earl used to occupy. Same desk. Different energy. Kyle had redecorated. Gone were Earl's photos of the original warehouse, the first delivery truck, the framed purchase order from his first client. Replaced with a glass desk, motivational art that said things like disrupt and innovate, and a standing desk setup that I never once saw him actually stand at. I said what needed to be said. Kyle, my clients have relationships with me. Not with the company. Not with Marcus. With me. If you put a layer between me and my accounts, you're adding friction to relationships that run on trust and speed. He leaned back. Did that fingers-steepled thing that people do when they think they're being strategic, but are actually just stalling. I appreciate your loyalty to the old model. But we're evolving. Marcus brings a modern perspective. Fresh eyes. Sometimes you need someone who isn't trapped in legacy thinking to see the opportunities you're missing. Legacy thinking. There it was again. My decade of relationship building, my $58 million in managed revenue, my 94% client retention rate. Legacy thinking. I stood up. I think we see this differently. I think we do, he said. Smiled. The smile of a man who thinks he's already won because he inherited the scoreboard. 3 weeks later, I found out why the smile was so confident. Marcus Webb called me into his office, closed the door, informed me that as part of the revenue restructuring, my position was being eliminated. My accounts would be redistributed among the existing sales team under Marcus's management. My role as VP of Sales was being replaced by a Director of Client Engagement position that would focus on strategic account development. A demotion dressed in a nicer title. Reporting to Marcus. At a $40,000 pay cut. I said no. Marcus said, "This isn't a negotiation. Kyle approved this yesterday." I said, "Then Kyle can tell me himself." Marcus picked up his phone and called Kyle. Put it on speaker. Kyle's voice filled the room. "We've decided to go in a different direction. You've done great work, but the company needs new energy and sales leadership. I'm confident Marcus can take things from here." "You're firing me?" Silence for about 3 seconds. Then Kyle said the sentence that launched everything that happened next. "Don't worry about it. We'll find someone better by Monday." Monday. They'd find someone better than 11 years of institutional knowledge, 18 major account relationships, a 94% retention rate, and $58 million in managed revenue. By Monday. In an industry where it takes 18 months to land a major account and 5 years to build the kind of trust that keeps them. By Monday. I looked at Marcus. He shrugged. "We'll send you the severance details by end of day." I walked back to my office, closed the door, sat down, opened my personal laptop, started a timer in my head. Not a countdown to panic, a countdown to launch. See, here's what Kyle and Marcus didn't understand. When you fire a salesperson, you're not just removing a name from an org chart. You're severing every relationship that person holds. And in B2B sales, especially in an industry where purchases are recurring and relationships are multi-year, the person is the account. David Chin at Southeastern Fabricators didn't have a relationship with Grayson Industrial Supply. He had a relationship with me. Patricia Wells at Memorial Healthcare didn't trust the Grayson brand. She trusted my recommendations. When I left, those relationships didn't stay behind in a CRM database. They walked out the door in my pocket. But I didn't act on impulse. That's important. I went home, called my lawyer. Her name was Dana Park. Sharp. Specialized in employment and business law. I'd had her review my Grayson contract 3 months earlier when I first saw the writing on the wall. The non-compete clause was the first thing she'd flagged. "It's aggressive on paper, but poorly drafted," she'd told me then. Geographic restriction says 50 miles from any Grayson office. But they only have 3 offices: Raleigh, Charlotte, and Wilmington. The entire rest of the Southeast is open. Their clients are spread across 7 states. You could set up in Greenville, South Carolina, and legally service 80% of their client base without touching the non-compete. She paused. "Also, the clause was in your original contract from 11 years ago. They never updated it when your role changed. A court would likely narrow it further given the scope change. I filed that information away 3 months ago like ammunition you hope you never need. Now I needed it. I spent the first month doing nothing visible. Collected my severance. Updated my LinkedIn, but didn't announce anything dramatic. Met with Dana twice to finalize the legal framework for a new company. Filed the LLC paperwork in South Carolina. Opened business accounts. Built a website. Nothing public yet. Just infrastructure. The foundation of what was coming. Month 2, I got strategic. Reached out to a commercial real estate agent in Greenville. Found office space. Small. 2,000 square feet. Enough for a lean operation. Signed a 2-year lease. Started setting up operations. Ordering furniture. Installing phones. Building out the CRM. I did everything myself because I didn't have employees yet, and because I wanted every piece of this business to be something I chose and built from scratch. Not inherited. Not given. Earned. During those first 2 months, my phone didn't stop ringing. Clients. One after another. David Chin called first. Day 3 after my termination. What happened? Kyle decided to go a different direction. A different direction from $4.8 million in annual business? Is he insane? I can't comment on that. Well, I can. You let me know when you land somewhere. We're not staying with people who fire the only reason we're there. Patricia Wells from Memorial Healthcare called the next week. Same story. We got an email saying our account was being transitioned to someone named Marcus. Who is Marcus? Kyle's college roommate. Dead silence. You're joking. I wish I was. Get settled somewhere and call me. We'll follow you anywhere. 7 more calls over the next month. All saying variations of the same thing. Where are you going? When you get there, we're coming. I didn't recruit anyone. Didn't call a single client. Didn't send a single email soliciting business. They found me. Every single one. Because relationships don't live in CRM databases. They live in trust. And trust follows people, not logos. Month 3. Launch day. Apex Supply Solutions. My company. My name on the door. Office in Greenville, South Carolina. 52 miles from the nearest Grayson office. Legally clean. Dana had triple-checked everything. I sent one LinkedIn post. Excited to announce the launch of Apex Supply Solutions. Bringing the same commitment to relationships and reliability that defined my career in industrial supply. Now serving clients across the Southeast. Let's build something. No mention of Grayson. No shots fired. No drama. Just an announcement. Within 72 hours, I had 14 inbound inquiries. 9 were former Grayson clients. 5 were new prospects who found me through referrals from former Grayson clients. David Chin at Southeastern Fabricators was the first to sign. For $0.8 million annual account. Moved his entire supply contract to Apex in one phone call. I told you years ago, he said. I don't buy from companies. I buy from you. Patricia Wells moved Memorial Healthcare's $3.2 million account the same week. Then Coastal Manufacturing at $2.1 million. Then Atlantic Construction at $1.7 million. Then Piedmont Hospital Group at $2.4 million. 5 accounts. $14.2 million in annual revenue. Transferred in less than a month. Not because I stole them. Because they chose to leave a company that fired the person they trusted and follow him to one that didn't exist 90 days ago. Meanwhile, back at Grayson, Marcus Webb was discovering in real time that industrial sales isn't content strategy. The transition email Grayson sent to clients was the first disaster. Generic. Corporate. We're excited to announce a restructuring of our account management team to better serve your evolving needs. No personal calls. No individual outreach. No. Hey, I know this is a change. Let me assure you that your service level won't be affected. Just a mass email with a new contact name that nobody recognized. David Chin's operations manager called the Grayson main line the week after I left asking about a standing order modification. Got transferred 3 times. Nobody knew who handled the account. The operations manager called David directly and said, "What happened to your guy over there?" David said they fired him. The operations manager said, "Then we need to start shopping." That's how fast trust evaporates when the person who built it disappears. Not weeks. Not months. One phone call. One bad experience. One moment where a client realizes the person they relied on is gone, and what's left is a switchboard. Marcus's approach to the accounts he inherited was exactly what you'd expect from a content strategist pretending to be a sales director. He sent template emails. Scheduled introduction calls that felt like job interviews where the client was being interviewed. Used buzzwords that made plant managers in Alabama physically cringe. One email he sent to the procurement director at Atlantic Construction included the phrase, "I'd love to explore synergistic touchpoints to optimize our partnership ecosystem." The procurement director, a woman named Brenda Hollis who's been buying industrial supplies since before Marcus was born, forwarded it to 3 people with the note, "Is this a real email or did a robot write it?" That email circulated through the industry for weeks. The specific failures stacked up fast. Week 2, Marcus approved a pricing change on Memorial Healthcare's supply contract without understanding the volume discount structure. The price increase hit their purchasing system automatically and generated a $47,000 overcharge on a single order. Patricia Wells called Grayson furious. Got Marcus. He tried to smooth it over with, "I'll have my team review the discrepancy and circle back with a resolution framework." Patricia said, "I've been buying from Grayson for 7 years, and this is the first time anyone has ever overcharged me by $47,000 and responded with corporate jargon. Fix it today or I'm done." He couldn't fix it that day because he didn't understand the pricing engine. It took 4 days. Patricia was done by day 2. She called me on day 3. Week 5, Marcus lost a $1.8 million account because he missed a contract renewal deadline. Just missed it. The client's purchasing system auto-generated an RFP that went to 5 competitors. Grayson wasn't one of them because their contract had technically lapsed. By the time Marcus realized what happened, the client had already signed with a competitor. $1.8 million in annual revenue gone because nobody on Marcus's calendar had flagged a renewal date that I had tracked in my head for 6 years. Week 8, he sent the wrong product specifications to a construction firm that was ordering safety equipment for a government contract. The specs didn't meet OSHA compliance requirements. The client caught it before ordering. If they hadn't, Grayson would have been liable for supplying non-compliant safety equipment to a federal project. That's not a revenue problem. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. The client pulled their account that week. Didn't even call. Just sent a certified letter terminating the relationship. Kyle sent me a cease and desist letter in month 3. Claimed I was violating my non-compete and soliciting Grayson clients. Dana responded with a 4-page letter that methodically destroyed every claim. The non-compete geographic restriction didn't cover Greenville. The clause was from an outdated contract that didn't reflect my actual role. And most critically, every client who left Grayson had initiated contact with me, not the other way around. Dana included the phone records. Inbound calls. Every single one. The cease and desist died quietly. Kyle never followed through with litigation because his own lawyer probably told him what Dana told me. They don't have a case. They have a tantrum. Then my old team started calling. Not for advice. Not for references. For jobs. Rachel Kim called first. She was my best senior rep, 9 years at Grayson. Managed $8 million in accounts. The kind of salesperson who remembers that her client's daughter just got into nursing school and asks about it on the next call. Not because she read it in the CRM notes. Because she actually cares. I can't do this anymore, she said on the phone. Her voice was flat. Exhausted. Marcus had me sit in on a client call yesterday. He called the client by the wrong name. Not a similar name. A completely different name. The client's name is James. He called him Jason. 3 times. I corrected him after the call, and he said it doesn't matter. They know what I meant. She paused. I've spent 9 years building trust with these accounts, and I'm watching a man who can't remember a client's first name dismantle everything from the inside. I'm done. Rachel joined Apex as my first hire. Brought 3 accounts with her that specifically requested the transition when they heard she'd left Grayson. Then Tom Briggs. 8 years at Grayson. Strongest technical knowledge on the team. The kind of rep who could walk onto a factory floor and diagnose a supply chain bottleneck in 20 minutes. Clients called Tom for advice before they called their own engineers. He followed Rachel by 2 weeks. Didn't even negotiate salary. Just said, match what I was making and give me autonomy. That's all I need. I gave him both. Then Anita Fowler. 6 years. Best relationship manager I'd ever trained. She could turn a cold call into a coffee meeting and a coffee meeting into a $500,000 annual account. She brought 2 accounts with her that I hadn't even contacted because those clients specifically told Anita, wherever you go, we're going. That's the thing Kyle never understood. He thought he was firing one person. He was actually firing the hub of a network that took a decade to weave, and when the hub moves, the network follows. Within 6 months, I had 4 former Grayson employees and $23 million in annual revenue. Lean operation. Low overhead. No glass desks. No motivational art. No standing desks nobody stands at. No Monday morning synergy meetings. Just people who knew the industry serving clients who knew them back. The way Earl built it originally. Before the NBA showed up. Grayson's numbers started showing up in the trade press by month 7. Revenue down 34% year over year. Not a dip. A cliff. 3 major account losses in Q3 alone, each one documented in the industry newsletter that every decision maker in the Southeast reads over their morning coffee. Staff turnover at 40%. In an industry where institutional knowledge is the product, 40% turnover means your company is hemorrhaging its own brain. The people who know things are leaving. The people replacing them don't know things yet. And the clients sitting in the middle of that transition are watching their service quality drop in real time and making phone calls to companies that can do better. Companies like mine. Kyle tried to spin it publicly. Sent the industry newsletter a quote about strategic repositioning and market evolution during a transitional growth phase. strategic repositioning, market evolution, transitional growth phase. 3 phrases that translate to one sentence in plain English. We're losing, and we don't want to admit it. The same newsletter ran a piece the following month about Apex Supply Solutions' rapid growth, new client acquisitions, and aggressive hiring. They didn't connect the dots publicly. They didn't need to. Everyone in the industry had already connected them over a beer at a trade show or a phone call between procurement directors who talk to each other more than their vendors realize. Marcus Webb lasted 8 months. 8 months of losing accounts, mismanaging pricing, alienating clients, and slowly realizing that the job he took as a favor to his college roommate was actually a real job that required real skills he didn't have. His resignation email, forwarded to me by someone still inside Grayson who I won't name because they still work there, was a masterclass in blame deflection. The current market conditions and inherited account instability made it impossible to achieve the targets set by leadership. I wish the Grayson team well in navigating these challenging dynamics. Inherited account instability. The accounts were stable for a decade under me. The only thing Marcus inherited was a gold mine. He just didn't know how to mine. Kyle replaced Marcus with a recruiter hire from outside the industry. A woman from a pharmaceutical distribution company. Different products, different clients, different everything. She lasted 4 months before she quit, citing unrealistic expectations and insufficient support from leadership. Translation: Kyle expected her to rebuild 11 years of relationships in 4 months and gave her nothing to work with except a CRM full of contacts who weren't returning calls and a sales team that was already updating their LinkedIn profiles. Then Earl called me. Earl Grayson, the founder, the man who hired me 11 years ago, who taught me that your word is your inventory, who built the company his nephew was dismantling. He'd been retired for over a year, playing golf, traveling with his wife, deliberately staying out of company business because he believed in letting Kyle find his footing. But the trade press articles reached him, the revenue numbers reached him, and the phone calls from former clients who considered Earl a personal friend reached him. He asked me to lunch. Quiet restaurant outside of town. When I walked in, he looked older than I remembered. Thinner. The retirement hadn't agreed with him the way he'd hoped. We ordered, made small talk. Then he set his fork down and looked at me across the table. Tell me what happened. I told him everything. The restructuring. Marcus. The demotion offer. The "we'll find someone better by Monday" line. The clients leaving. The cease and desist. All of it. Laid it out the way I lay out a sales proposal. Facts. Timeline. Evidence. No emotion. Earl listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Long enough that the waiter came by twice, and he waved them away both times. Then he said, I built that company from a storage unit and a used delivery van. 30 years. And my nephew burned through it in 14 months because he thought an MBA meant he understood what holds a business together. He paused, took a drink of water. It's not the spreadsheet. It's the handshake. I told him that. He told me I was thinking small. Then Earl said something I wasn't expecting. I want to invest in your company. I set my glass down. Earl, I'm serious. I've been watching Apex from the outside. You've got $23 million in revenue in 6 months. You've got my best former employees. You've got clients I spent decades courting who left my company to follow you. That tells me everything I need to know about where the value actually lived. He pulled out a folder. Inside was a term sheet, not something he'd thrown together over lunch. Something he'd had prepared. His financial advisor's name was on it. $500,000 equity investment. Silent partner. No operational involvement. I don't want to run anything. I just want to put my money where the talent actually is. I looked at the term sheet. Looked at Earl. Your nephew will lose his mind. My nephew lost his mind when he fired you. This is just the invoice. I laughed. First real laugh in months. We shook hands over the table. The same kind of handshake Earl taught me about 11 years ago. The kind where your word is your inventory and the deal is done before the paper is signed. Earl's investment hit the account 2 weeks later. I used it to expand. Hired 2 more reps. Upgraded our logistics platform. Leased warehouse space so we could handle direct fulfillment instead of relying on third-party distributors. The investment wasn't just money. It was a signal. Earl Grayson, the founder of the company that fired me, believed in what I was building more than he believed in what his nephew was running. That signal traveled through the industry like electricity through water. By month 9, Apex had $31 million in annual revenue, 14 employees, a client retention rate of 97%, and a founder investor whose last name was on the building across town where his nephew was trying to stop the bleeding. Kyle found out about Earl's investment through the industry grapevine. According to people still inside Grayson, he called his uncle and the conversation was loud enough that the admin outside Earl's study could hear it through the door. Kyle called it a betrayal. Earl called it a correction. Kyle said, "You're funding the man who destroyed our company." Earl said, "He didn't destroy anything. You did. He just built something better with the pieces you threw away." I wasn't on that call, but 3 different people told me the same version of it independently, which in my experience means it's pretty close to accurate. 12 months after I was fired, the Industry Association held its annual conference in Nashville. Southeast Industrial Supply Summit. Big event. For 100 attendees. Every major player in the regional industrial supply chain. Grayson had a booth. Apex had a booth. 200 feet apart in the exhibition hall. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. I walked in with Rachel, Tom, and Anita. My team. The people Kyle's leadership had pushed out and my company had caught. We set up our booth. Professional. Clean. Simple banner that said Apex Supply Solutions with our tagline underneath. Relationships first. Always. Not a shot at Grayson. Just a statement of fact that happened to be a shot at Grayson. We started meeting people. Shaking hands. Having conversations. Industry contacts I'd known for years came by to see the booth. Former clients who hadn't switched yet came by to ask questions. New prospects who'd heard about the company through the grapevine came by to introduce themselves. The booth was busy from open to close. 3 deep at times. Rachel was in her element working the room. Tom was in the back having technical conversations with engineers who wanted to understand our fulfillment capabilities. Anita was collecting business cards and scheduling follow-up meetings with the practiced ease of someone who's been doing this longer than Marcus Webb has been alive. Kyle was at the Grayson booth across the hall. Smaller booth than last year. Fewer staff. 2 junior reps I didn't recognize and 1 senior manager who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The energy was defensive, closed off, like a team that knows the score and is playing out the clock. Kyle spent most of the morning on his phone. When he did talk to people who stopped by, the conversations were short. Nobody lingered. I could see it from 200 feet away. The body language of a booth that's losing. People approaching, pausing, reading the banner, then moving on without stopping. The Grayson name that used to draw a crowd was now just a name on a banner that people walked past on their way to booths with energy. That afternoon, I gave a panel presentation on client retention strategies in B2B industrial sales. Standing room only. 120 people in a room built for 80. The moderator introduced me as the founder of Apex Supply Solutions, one of the fastest-growing industrial supply companies in the Southeast, and a veteran of the industry with over a decade of experience building client relationships that last. I noticed Kyle in the back of the room, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He'd come to watch. I didn't change my presentation. Didn't add anything personal. Didn't make it about him. Just delivered 30 minutes of everything I knew about building client relationships in an industry where trust is the only product that actually matters. The stuff Earl taught me. The stuff 11 years of showing up and keeping your word teaches you. The stuff no MBA covers because you can't learn it from a case study. You have to live it. Client by client. Handshake by handshake. Year by year. After the presentation, a line formed. Business cards. Partnership inquiries. 2 new client prospects. A journalist from the trade newsletter asking if I'd do an interview. And at the very end of the line, after everyone else had gone, Kyle. He waited, hands in his pockets, looking nothing like the man who sat behind his glass desk 12 months ago and said they'd find someone better by Monday. The confidence was gone. The suit was the same expensive brand, but it fit differently now. Looser, like the man inside it had gotten smaller. Good presentation, he said. Thanks. Look, I think things could have been handled differently. They could have. Long pause. He looked at the floor, then back at me. Maybe there's a way we could work together going forward. Some kind of collaborative arrangement. Your client expertise with our infrastructure and distribution network. I studied his face for a moment. 29 years old. A year into running a company he didn't build and couldn't maintain. Offering collaboration to the man he fired because the man he fired built the thing he's losing and he doesn't know how to stop the bleeding. I pulled out my card. Apex Supply Solutions. My name. Founder and CEO. Handed it to him. I appreciate the offer, Kyle, but I'm not available for collaboration. I've got a company to run. He took the card, looked at it, looked at me. My uncle invested in your company. He did. He's my family. He's also a businessman. And businessmen put money where value is. Your uncle taught me that. Kyle's jaw tightened. He nodded once, turned around, and walked back toward the Grayson booth where his two junior reps were scrolling their phones and nobody was stopping. I walked back to my booth where David Chun was waiting to introduce me to a contact at a manufacturing firm in Georgia, a potential $6 million annual account. David clapped me on the shoulder as I sat down. Who was that? Kyle Grayson. The nephew? The nephew. David shook his head. He doesn't look like he's having a good year. He's not. His uncle really invested in you? $500,000. David whistled. Earl always knew where to put his money. That's what built the original company. And that's what's building this one. David introduced me to the Georgia contact. We talked for 40 minutes. By the end of the conversation, they were ready for a proposal. I shook their hand. The handshake Earl taught me. Firm. Direct. A promise compressed into a gesture. Your word is your inventory. I looked across the exhibition hall one more time. The Grayson booth was empty. Kyle was gone. His junior reps were packing up early. The banner that said Grayson Industrial Supply in letters that used to mean something was being folded and put into a box. And 200 feet away my booth was still 3 deep with people who wanted to talk about the future. Not the legacy. The future. My future. Built from scratch by a man who got fired on a Friday and told he'd be replaced by Monday, and spent 12 months proving that the only irreplaceable thing in business isn't the logo on the wall. It's the handshake across the table. And handshakes follow the hand that earned them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.